Hello, I'm Dr. Erwin Kovacevic, the Dean of Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. I'm also a professor of applied linguistics, but today I'm going to be a moderator of a conversation about university education. Before we start, I would love to thank Professor Yasir Göz and his team of students for organizing this recording. I hope it's going to work. It's going to work well. I think it has several purposes today. One of the purposes is, of course, this recording should in practice. But this other purpose, which is more relevant to our faculty needs, is actually this conversation about our practices and about these principles behind the practices. Let me introduce my partners in this conversation. Gentlemen, Professor Orkun Aydın, a psychiatrist, the head of our psychology program. Welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation to be here today.
Thank you so much.
Professor Muhyiddin Mulalic, a historian, the head of our political sciences program. Professor, it's great to see you here.
Your handsome colleague, huh?
Thank you. And Professor Kenan Zekic, the head of our visual arts program, visual artist, designer. Professor, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
When we talk about education, when we contemplate about educational issues, there are so many dilemmas in theory and practice that, if you ask me, keep not being resolved. Perhaps this is not a disadvantage. I think this is an advantage of this discipline. You may approach a problem from various perspectives. All these perspectives will be legitimate perspectives. There are amazing theoretical frameworks. There are many available findings which will support each of these positions. Let me start with a bit more general question, and then we will move on to our daily practices here at the faculty. I hope that in the end, I guess everyone should profit from this conversation. So, Professor Aydın, let me start with this general question.
Okay.
What do you think should be the main purpose of university education?
It's a really difficult question, I guess, because when you search it from the internet database, you can find several answers for this question. The general purpose, I guess, I would like to answer this question from a psychological perspective. I think the general main purpose should be acquiring the cognitive flexibility, or you can take it as intellectual flexibility. This flexibility refers to the adaptation of the difficult situations or challenges. So which means that, for example, if you would like to come closer to the evolutionary approach, you can find it difficult to adapt into these challenging conditions. And if you cannot adapt, you will fade away in the end. So in these universities, if we can give this proper education or proper training, or if we can acquire these students decent capabilities to adapt to these new situations, then they can survive, I guess. So that's why if we achieve these tasks, they can also criticize, they can generate new knowledge, and also they can provide new, more novel insights to those challenges, I guess. So that would be my answer. But also you can find more general comments on the main purposes of the universities, which may, for example, promote new challenges, promote new knowledge and criticisms.
So to sum up, somehow, the education and all the practices should be focused on developing cognitive capacities and cognitive flexibility.
Yes, more than knowledge, it should be flexible.
flexibility for solving daily problems, professional problems.
Because the students get out of their molds, and also they can ask questions, they can criticize, they can recommend new insights. So this is related to the flexibility. If you are not flexible, if you are too strict, then you will eventually break down.
Thank you very much. Professor Mulovic, same
Well,
question.
first of all, I would like to thank the Dean and Deputy Dean, Professor Kovacevic, and then Professor Jacek Gos for organizing this panel. Of course, it's always important to address these questions of teaching, of learning, of education, of pedagogy as well. The purpose of education. I always go to the classics, to Aristotle and Plato, going back to the human nature itself, and then, of course, going to a very basic statement, human beings are basically rational animals. What they have rational capacity, they have a soul, and they have the body. And therefore, the education as a whole should reflect and then should respond to the human nature as well. And therefore, we are born to think. Otherwise, if we don't think, if we don't criticize, if we don't analyze, if we do not reflect upon, if we do not ponder, if we don't use those capacities and the faculties, there is no purpose of the life itself. And then, of course, where we can actualize our potentials, of course, we can actualize our potentials within the education system. And then, of course, the university is there to comply with our potentials and then, of course, to comply with our faculties. And therefore, it's very important for the education system to look at, and the purpose of the education system is to address the civic education, for instance, to address the human beings who should take into consideration their civic responsibilities and the civic roles. So we are not only acquiring skills and then, of course, acquiring knowledge, but at the same time, we are fathers, we are mothers, we are colleagues, we are citizens of our state, and then, of course, of the world. And for that reason, there is a need for diversity. We need to develop different kinds of abilities and the skills. And for that reason, we can do it at the university. And of course, besides this, when you talk about the knowledge, skills, and the experiences, they are very important, of course, and they can be acquired at the university. And then, of course, here we are talking about possibilities and then, of course, opportunities for the young people when it comes to employability and when it comes to the future prospects, and then when it comes to the quality of the life itself after the graduation. For instance, sometimes I talk to the young people who actually say that the university doesn't matter. It actually does matter. And then you are different if you complete your degree. For instance, if you look at Bosnia and the last census in 2013, you will find out that I think around 10% or up to 15%, if I'm not mistaken, of the people in Bosnia and Herzegovina have a degree or high level of the education, which is very low. If you look at the, let's say, countries in the EU, that range would go to, let's say, 45, 50% or 60%. And therefore, if you acquire the education and then, of course, you acquire a degree, then, of course, you differentiate yourself. And then, of course, you differentiate yourself in terms of the opportunities and the quality of the life itself. This is a short answer to the question. Thank you. I would like to give a chance to the other colleagues to participate as well. Thank you.
Professor, thank you very much. So just to recap, if possible, correct me if I'm wrong. So you are saying that it is very difficult to isolate this sole main purpose. That there are many purposes. One of them, of course, being this cultural tendency towards excellence, right? But then on the other side, we have issues of, as you said, employability. So these humanistic purposes need to be addressed, need to be facilitated through university education, but also there is this somehow collective awareness that it is not very perhaps easy to address all these purposes at once. Am I right? Partly, yes, I guess.
Yes, indeed. This is actually what I'm trying here to summarize is one of my articles that I published on the holistic education. And therefore, overall, the objective is how to involve the whole human being, how to target his mind, how to target his or her soul, and how to target his or her body. And therefore, here we are talking about rational inquiry, and then of course we are talking here about the sense experience, and overall the exposure to the natural world and the exposure to the social world itself.
Thank you, Professor. Professor Rekic, same question. Purpose of education, the main purpose.
I mean, the title itself says to educate. But main purpose of educational process, I'd say that what I've actually kind of redefined my understanding of education with the recent COVID crisis. Because what we have realized without students in the university is that it's not only about education, about learning and acquiring the skills, it's about everything else more than only about learning the content that we are kind of producing and delivering to students. So I think that's kind of getting people, young people, into the hub, into the kind of hub where they are exposed to different energies, from learning to kind of exchanging the energies with other students and their interaction with the world and being exposed to all kinds of things. So it's not necessarily only education, it's also all those other things. I mean, if you take into consideration in the last 60, 70 years, because we are leaning very much on the model of Western education that is being kind of broadcasted throughout the world. So we see that universities were hubs of creativity, of propagating the freedom, propagating the advanced ideas. And now I have to refer back again to COVID. We realize actually that what we are missing when we do not have this model of education. But definitely we are also becoming aware how the model of education is going to be changed. This was a forceful change, but definitely we are facing the big change in the education process. And for students, it's really important to get not only the knowledge, but to develop their, I can speak from the position of Visual Arts and Communication Design program, because it's a very kind of specific group of young people coming here with already kind of predetermination what they would like to do, and their kind of attitude towards the world surrounding them, and they would like to process it, distill it, and deliver it in some form of visual communication or some art or design, whatever it is. And for them, it's kind of distilling all these influences and exposing the field for them so they can kind of determine their direction. And when speaking about students in design and art education, it's also, for them, it's really important to be the part of university, to be exposed to other fields such as social sciences, humanistics, natural sciences, to kind of, because it's very observational activity designed by itself, education as well, and therefore the university experience is really important for them to kind of position themselves in the context and taking into account everything I mentioned and you all mentioned.
Thank you very much. So, if I may just add a comment. So it's not only about what or what the purpose is, it's about how we actually go towards these purposes. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's perhaps purposes may vary, but it is how we actually move towards those purposes. Am I missing something?
No, yeah, you're right, but also, and I think the other side of education, teaching is tough. This is a pit stop in someone's life. It's not like, oh, this is the final point. No, it's just a pit stop. students spent here 4 years. We were students. We spent 4 years here. We have all our wishes, and we take what we want. Not everything we should or we need, but we take what we want, and that's how it works. But I mean, our job is to expose students. Maybe you're going to need this too, and to communicate about this, to raise those questions, to raise these discussions. And I don't think that linear process of education is really the model that I consider as the valuable one.
Thank you very much for bringing this up. Now, we started, of course, with this teacher's perspective, right? Instructor's perspective.
May I tell something?
Please.
From
please.
students' perspectives, I noticed that the university is a living organism. So I think the students are the essential parts of this living organism. So I think with the students, loss of students, I think we lost blood. So now we are still losing our blood. So that's why our functioning now is a little bit stumbling around these environments. I hope they will come back and then we will meet again. So from the students' perspective, I think this is too tough. As you can see, we can come here, and also several students can come to the university, but most of them are now waiting us at their homes. So I think after all this process, and there will be happiness in the future.
Of course, hopefully, yes, definitely. Yes, this is what I was trying to say. Their perspective, their contributions to the setting, to the context in which we, I don't know, practice education is too precious to be overlooked, right? This is why, let me move on to the next question. I think it's very relevant to what we just started talking about. It is the challenges that university students face today. So, what do you think? Of course, the pandemic on its own is a major challenge for everyone. But what would you add to this list of challenges contemporary, modern university students experience today? So this is part one of the question, and the part two would be, what do you, as university instructors, do to help them cope with those challenges? Perhaps you can answer the question from your own perspective, or you may perhaps relate the answer to the practices of your programs or the entire institution, if you wish. So the challenges that university students face today. Professor, can you follow this one? We will proceed.
Okay, first, I think we should define the challenges. The first one. I'm also a researcher, and also I strictly follow the recent researches regarding this distance learning or remote learning procedure. The overall success of the students during this whole process, because now I think this will be the third semester. In the upcoming semester, this will be the third semester that we are doing this online education. The overall success rate of the students are literally the same with the face-to-face teaching system, education system, and also even more better than the face-to-face learning system when you compare with the online education. But I think indeed they are facing with challenges, so be it. But the most prominent challenges that I can notice that is that the psychological instability of the students. From this, because I'm the expert in these mental disorders and the psychological well-being, I can easily say that, for example, I know that they are suffering from increased anxiety levels. Because suppose that you're a student and you have several courses during a day, you are staying at your home, you are in front of your computer or laptop or mobile phone, and you are following the courses, plus you are messaging, texting with your friends, and also you are watching TV series from Netflix. I don't know, could it be an advertisement or not? You can erase this part. And so you are waiting for the things that you will face with, and you are unaware of them, most of them, because you are with your family. But if you are a university student in a foreign country, for example, you don't have your family next to you. You will have your friends, and you will have separate spare times, the leisure times, and you can spend with your friends also. And you have a time to socialize. I don't mean the virtual communication style. I mean real face-to-face communications. So that may reduce the anxiety levels. So what we are doing in decreasing or coping with these challenges, we are providing professional service in our counseling center. Of course, it's closed now, but we are doing this online counseling style. So they can apply if they want, and also after getting an appointment, they can manage their challenges with the experts in the field. From my perspective, what I'm doing, I increased my physical exercises. So I'm much more active than before. And also I'm managing my time in a more proper way. And I'm also taking care of my sleep. I have regular sleep. So these are the things that we can do.
Personal tips on how to cope with anxiety. Okay, Professor, thank you. Professor Mulovic.
Well, thank you very much for this question. First of all, we have to go back to some essential concepts: change, progress, and transformation. So those are philosophical terms, and then of course could go back to sociology or any other field. What is reality? Reality is that everything is in flux, everything is changing. So if you go back, throughout the history, you talk about agricultural society, you talk about industrial society, you talk about post-industrial society, you talk about electronic society or information society or knowledge-based society, and we come today to digital society. Throughout all these processes, all of these historical periods, the humanity had to adapt, had to change, and had to, as you have rightly mentioned, cope with, find certain kind of alternatives. And therefore today, when we talk about COVID-19 and when we talk about the transformations and changes that are taking place at the universities in terms of teaching and learning and providing the services to the students, all of us had to make shift and had to change. And then I think if we go recently back, we find out that significant changes and transformations have been already completed due Bologna process. All of us, I think we are senior or old enough to remember traditional or classical learning and teaching in the university. And therefore we had to go through such kind of the changes and transformations. Today, I see that COVID-19, online teaching, online learning, online doing businesses, online communication is a challenge, but at the same time it is an opportunity. Especially in view of the fact that we are in digital age and therefore we have to comply with the modern trends and modern developments when it comes to the digital age and then when it comes to utilization, handling and using of the modern technologies. And for that reason, there is a revolution at the university and the revolution must take place and we have to cope with that revolution and we have to find alternatives. If I look at the past year, for instance, without going to some historical developments of those changes and transformations in the past when it comes to teaching and learning and the methods and the approaches to teaching and learning, I can see that at IUS, for instance, at the International University of Sarajevo, we were very lucky to have at least the infrastructure, educational infrastructure that could enable the transition from the, if I may say, traditional or the conventional ways of teaching in the classroom to online teaching. And this is something what is very important. If I'm to compare educational infrastructure at IUS and then of course the educational structure elsewhere at some other private universities and at some other public universities, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but broadly in the Western Balkans, IUS is very much ahead. In addition, IUS is very much ahead because of the experience, because of the professors who have the international experience, because of the professors who already were using partially so modern technologies in the classrooms even before COVID-19. This is also very important. Third, let us not forget that the major obstacle or barrier most of the countries and most of the universities have is language. Even though they have the modern technologies, they can use them today, but they don't know language. If you want to operate with any kind of the technology today, you need what? You need English. And then we are very lucky that at IUS we have professors, of course, who are fluent in English, who are teaching in English, and then for that reason they are also equipped and they can use modern technologies. For instance, if I go back even to 2014 or 2015, IUS provided us with Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Platform was available even then. And then, of course, some of our professors were using some of those platforms for distance learning and then, of course, online teaching. I remember some of those online courses with the professors from the United States, for instance, who were using Moodle. Going back to the specifics of your question, challenges and opportunities for both students and then, of course, for the professors, I think that the students also have changed. They have taken into consideration modern technologies, and then they are much more aware that they cannot escape online teaching and online learning. In comparison to the beginning of the semester, I actually have realized significant changes and differences. In the beginning of the semester, let's say beginning of the COVID-19, I remember very poor attendance. I remember that the students were escaping using of the technology, telling me, I don't know this, I don't have this, I don't have camera, I cannot use this, I cannot upload that. But this is something what is not taking place now. Students are present, attendance is very high, their participation is much more active, using of the online technology that we are actually using for teaching and learning. They are also now much more effectively using it. And then also they are very much interacting throughout those platforms and making their presentations, making their projects, working in groups, interacting with the professors, and therefore I see significant improvements in this regard. Myself, unfortunately, I teach mostly theoretical courses, and therefore direct conversation, direct contact is very much lacking. But I try to fill in this gap through the student presentations, through students who watch short clips, short videos, they write the impressions, they on their cameras, they participate in the class based on those impressions. I also use the chats and the posts involving the students to pile their projects, the presentations, the videos and the clips that they actually watch and they review and they share it with the other students. And then I think that is also something what is working. The only problem I see with the online teaching and learning in terms of the proper assessment of the students, means conducting the examinations. Other than this, I find this appealing challenge and appealing opportunity for both, for the students and then for the professors, but also for universities. Why? Because even our university, I'm going back to the beginning of COVID-19, and then of course now has provided the number of laptops, cameras to all of our professors, and then of course the university and the IT department was making inquiries about what do you need to be effective in providing online teaching to our students.
Professor, thank you. You addressed a few other issues also beside besides students' challenges, but thank you very much. It was very elaborate. And actually, you partly addressed several issues that are very relevant for our daily ongoing dynamics, I would say, across our programs and across, as you said, other universities today, not only here. Professor Zekic, let me now, because we are, I think, slowly running out of time, let me, if you wish, address the challenges, but also let's start talking about this experiential learning by doing perspective that I think is very relevant when it comes to your program, your field. So do you think that your program, but also other programs, provide enough of this real, genuine learning experience?
You mean right now during the COVID era?
Well, we may make a little contrastive analysis, if you wish, before
During
COVID,
the COVID era,
and
definitely
today.
not. But we are doing our best to make it, to kind of, but I mean, no one is providing enough.
No one is, right?
So let's forget
Let's
about
be real.
that. So let's be real. And in terms of challenges, whatever is challenge for students, also challenge for professor.
Okay.
And I think that what's been shown that during the last 6-7 months, that the challenges were higher for the professors than students, because those guys, they are digital natives, and they can switch easily. The digital communication is part of their everyday life. But among the academics, we have seen the problem, what's happening? And that's, I think, that creates another challenge for students, because professors cannot cope with ongoing issues. And that's, I see, as the challenge for students, what we are creating there. But that's easily to overcome. I mean, we can easily overcome that by learning, adapting new. But also, I agree with what Professor Muhyiddin said, like, in this era, we kind of pushed through some new digital tools the students could utilize, and that normally we wouldn't do them. We would do it in class, we would do some kind of physical action, interaction. But right now we are switching more to some digital tools and kind of integrating them. They are coming from industry, coming from education. And that's opportunity we are kind of using. But in terms of general challenges for students, I think the challenges for students are always kind of very characteristic for the generation that it's on the stage, isn't it? I mean, we were all students and we know what were our challenges. But when you cut it down to the basic ones, it's about your kind of, you have the purpose why you are at the university and you would like to progress in the field that you have opted for. And they have the same challenge like we did, but this time I think they have a kind of overload of information, because they are still exposed to the field, all kind of academic fields and industries. And it's sometimes hard to cope with that many information regarding your future profession, and that creates anxiety and frustration even without COVID. And I think that is the challenge that should be addressed. That's something to push. So still push for your thing and be aware of the things, but don't be frustrated by the thing, because things are not always the way they look. So these are the challenges that are still, but those challenges are the same for us as well, isn't it? I mean, now we know more than we ever did about everything in our field. So, and we did not stop doing that. So because we are kind of more mature, older, and having the practice experience, teaching as well, and we need to help them realize that. So yes, there are other things, but you are still there. So to push their kind of personal development and kind of understanding how to position themselves and actually be realistic in validating their skills and values in comparison to other people in the field, or you can say in the market, or whatever.
We should call student representative for the next round.
Definitely. Should we address this learning by doing issue?
Yeah, and
for example, what your students are doing right now.
Yeah, can I finish?
Please, yes.
And in terms of the basics, the core the essence of visual arts and communication design is learning by doing. We have that. That's our program, what it is. There are other programs operating like that, I mean, kind of some forms of practice. But in our case, that would be kind of impossible to finish the education without this part, because there are different kind of attitudes and approaches in design and visual communication. But this one we are kind of pushing through is dirty hands-on practice and learning by doing. And a lot of iterations, early fails, so fail early to overcome the mistake and learn more. So this is how we are doing and supporting it with the theory.
Thank you. Learning by doing.
Learning by doing from psychology program, I think our students are luckier than the other ones because our program is much more clinically oriented. So that's why we have carried all of our resources into these online environments easily. If you would like to, for example, see a client in a psychological environment, you don't have kind of very complex facilities to carry it on. So online communication is the very suitable way to see a client or to manage the patient or create any kind of psychological and psychology-related environment. And also from research perspective, we have carried all these data resources, collection of the data, and conducting any kind of scientific researches. All of them are carried to these virtual environments. And these platforms that we have benefited a lot. So our students that I like to mention, they are much more adapted than the other students, I guess.
Thank you. Professor, the same question.
Well, I think when it comes to an issue of learning by doing, of course, at our university it has not been neglected. I remember the first days after COVID-19, we started with the strategic plans and then initiatives and developing action plans of how to cope with the COVID-19 and then pandemic. For that reason, we started to talk about different opportunities for the students, accommodating them So we started to talk about in-class teaching and learning, and still we are conducting it. Some of our students are coming to the classes, some of our students are coming to the labs and laboratories, and then of course they are provided the practical training and the education. We also have hybrid teaching and learning, whereby we are accommodating students in the class and then of course online. And then thirdly, we have also quite many of our students who are gaining education and training through online platforms. But let us not forget that online platform as well is an opportunity for learning by doing. Of course, we are now in digital age, and therefore you can practically create something, do something yourself. And therefore, in this regard, I strongly believe that our university takes into consideration at least balancing these two dimensions, theoretical and then, of course, practical. And then I strongly believe these young people who are here today with us, in spite of COVID-19, they are in this way fighting back, COVID-19. They are, of course, acquiring practical skills. And then I would like to thank them for organizing this panel and then, of course, taking up this challenge. Also, I would like to add something related to digital skills and then, of course, digital age. And then, of course, again, I would like to mention that we also had to make certain kind of changes and transformations. If you are to look at IUS, for instance, comparing it with the other universities, you will find out that, for instance, if you look at teaching and learning, it is being very much at a digital form. If you look at the data documentation and the documentation of the files, your exams, your research papers, your courseworks, your anything what basically you do, we are basically now uploading it, and then of course we save it in a digital form. At our university, we conduct the assessment of the professors as well, the annual evaluation using an electronic digital forms. And then, of course, for that reason, we have e-campus platform. Many of our processes and developments when it comes to administrative units at Student Affairs Office, at Finance Office, at HR Office are being conducted through modern softwares that we basically use for different kinds of purposes. And in that regard, I strongly believe that even before COVID-19, we were basically there. We were ready.
Thank you. Professor, somehow you always manage to digress from the question that I asked, but it's fine. It's fine. All of these are very relevant.
Okay, I'm very much excited now to listen to your next question, please.
No, we will skip a few questions that I prepared, but now I would love to ask the questions that our students recommended. So one question for each of you, then we may perhaps slowly conclude, right? Our discussion. Okay, Professor, let's start with you, then we will go with Professor Mulic and conclude with Professor Ivy. Professor, the relationship between student and professor, what should it be like?
Oh, if I only knew. If I only knew. I think in the first place it has to be professional. I mean, students are here for a certain reason, so are we. So this is the first step. That's the minimum. And everything else is into account after that. I mean, but I think an open communication, not flattering, but open and tolerant and straightforward. And I think that's good basis for kind of developing.
So open, genuine, frank.
Yes.
But professional. Right.
Professional because students are here for a reason and you are also here for a reason. I mean, that's the connecting point. You're giving them what they came for. But everything else should be there to discuss, debatable and open, frank. And I think that could be the mutual benefit for the students and for the professors.
May I add something for
Please.
this question?
Please.
I think I agree with Professor Kenan. This should be a professional, and if I were them, I wouldn't call it as a relationship because in a relationship there are some kind of things that will fluctuate, oscillate between states, between these different states. But this is somehow a collaboration between students and the professors. So in this collaboration, we set the principles first, we agree on them, and then we are coming into an agreement. And between these agreements, there are no very big drift outs. So no one can lose or no one can change these principles during the course. So this course is the university path, I guess. But if you are calling this as a relationship, you would fail because in relationship, you can easily drift out and you can get angry, you can get scared, you can get easily afraid of your professor. So this is a very good collaboration between students and ours.
Thank you. Professor, any comments regarding this one?
Well, yes, indeed, I always have some comments.
Always have some
Anyway, well, I would like to kind of paraphrase what Confucius said. Let professor be professor and let a student be a student. And this is quite important. Well, let us know our distinctive roles. What is an ideal professor and what is an ideal student? Well, professor, he or she needs to have qualifications. He or she needs to possess knowledge and skills and experience. He or she needs to teach. And then, of course, he or she needs to be passionately so dedicated to the job that they are basically doing. So it means that they have to be in the class on time, they have to teach with passion, they need to be dedicated to their students, they need to provide transparency and fair treatment to all students, and on and on and on. And then, of course, punctually so, they have to assess the exams, and then, of course, research papers, and then, of course, answer to the emails of the students. And in that way, they can go back to this statement of Confucius, and they would say, let the professor be a professor and say, well, I'm a professor. In the same way, the students, they have their role. They have their role, of course. They should know why they are at the university. They should know what are their objectives and the goals at the university. They should answer the basic question, what is it that I want here at IUS? What do I want to achieve? And therefore, they should dedicate themselves to the studies. They shouldn't skip the classes, they should be in the class. They should work on their assignments. They should work even in addition to what is requested from them. They should respect the studying rules and regulations. And then, of course, they should respect the university as a holy and sacred place, and they should respect the professors in the same way that the professors are respecting the students. And then, of course, if you have such kind of the relationship, then everything would go smoothly, and then, of course, fine. In my professional career, I have been teaching for almost 20 years. I never, ever had any problems with the students. And then, of course, my treatment is a bit different, very much holistic, sometimes very much liberal, lenient, flexible. Sometimes I even, criticized and scolded for this. But I put the students at the center, and then, of course, throughout the guiding process and the consultations with them, I give them a space for the growth and development. And then, of course, the rectification of any kind of the shortcomings that they might have on their own, without being taught or without being directed or without being said. So like in Taoism, what they would say, do without doing, act without acting, so that they basically grow and they find their way themselves. This is basically my way of working with the students, and this is how I look at the professor-student relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Two more questions to go, then perhaps your concluding remarks. Professor Aydin, can a professor, university instructor, can she or he be sure that they are providing their students with a real, true, best learning experience?
Under these circumstances?
During these circumstances,
I think during the COVID era,
no one can be sure.
Of course not.
No one can be sure.
Because we don't have any student representative here. From our perspective, I can totally agree with your saying. We cannot be sure. Because we are giving, and also we are expecting a real life experience in a virtual environment. So I think we can change its name, virtual reality. Okay. So in terms of this virtual reality, yes, we are trying to put our best, and all of our efforts is to build up these capabilities of the students in these virtual environments. No, but I am not sure. Yes, according to the researchers, they are saying that yes, the overall success, the overall satisfaction of the students are comparable to the face-to-face learning. But I don't know. Really, I'm not sure.
I see.
So I can skip my turn to the other professors.
Any comments about this particular one? Can you be sure when you are providing a learning experience, can you be sure that it works?
Only if you see some successful works.
Only when you see their outcomes,
when you
their
see the
results.
outcome, otherwise you cannot. At least that's how I see it.
Well, do we give our best to our students? Well, first of all, I think in a way, a bit from a kind of a technical point of view. For everything, there are certain kind of the specific criterias. So basically, they would tell you, you fill in this criteria and that criteria, and then of course the outcome will come basically itself. If I am to look at what we give to our students, there are so many of those checks and balances, and then of course tests that would ensure certain kind of an outcome or certain kind of a service given to the students. Well, first of all, if you look at the university, each university has to get the accreditation. So state accreditation, and then of course international accreditation. So we are working with different kinds of ministries. So we are working with the ministry in Bosnia, with ministry in Turkey, with the QA agencies in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then of course we have those 4 accredited programs by QA Austria, and therefore we have to comply with certain kind of the requirements. Second, we have the university, our rectors and then our deans are always looking at what we do as faculties and then as individual professors, and what do we offer to students. And they have means and ways of checking it. So what they do, they knock, like my dean, he would knock the door and then he would ask, what are you doing? So why your students are complaining? Why do you give so many A's? Or why this and that? So I take that into consideration, and then of course I make the adjustments and changes, and then of course I act accordingly. Then
So
another instrument, well, we look at our students. Complaints of students are very important. These students' questionnaires that they fill in at the end of the semester, they matter. Of course, I'm very happy and then I'm very proud to receive very high student evaluation. And I'm very happy when I get student comments that are positive. And then of course, I take into consideration negative comments from the students, and then of course I make certain kind of adjustments and changes. Then also when you look at and go precisely to the curricula, the courses that we offer to the students, they go through the process of checks and balances and the adoption. We have the meetings, consultations, quarrels, and then we say this course is relevant and that course is not relevant. Let us change the curricula, let us not have it on the list. Then also we look at the each course, what we teach and what we give to the students in those courses. You know, what are the units or the modules that are covered in the course? Are the proper teaching assessments proper for this particular course? You have 2 exams or 3 exams. Anyway, at the end, to make it short, I strongly believe that due to the criteria that is set from different stakeholders that take into consideration setting those criteria, we do our best in giving the best service to the students. Yeah, this is my
And judge your
humble-
performance by feedback.
Yes, yes. In that way, I look at the services, because you can always look at the subjective dimension. You don't like something or something, appears to be, but that is subjectivity. But if you apply the criteria, if you go through the criteria and you give the service of any kind, then of course you can at least count and say that I have complied with the criteria. So this is the way how I look at what we precisely this question, what we give to the students, or do we give the proper service to the student? Thank you.
Thank you. We need to conclude, but feel free to share with us anything you think should be mentioned today. Perhaps this was a very short, brief discussion about several issues that partly overlap, and that, of course, when you start digging each of them, start analyzing them carefully and in depth, then there are so many dilemmas, so many issues, perhaps to reflect on. So your concluding remarks, but I would appreciate if perhaps you could share with us something from your daily practice, your classroom, when you felt like your lesson is really working. It's happening there. Look, I've been also teaching for almost 20 years now, and when you are an experienced teacher, whether you are prepared or not, when you walk in the class, there is some unpredictable dynamics going on, but I somehow, and you will probably agree, sense when the things are going right. Now, your concluding remarks, plus if you wish something personal from your own classroom. And do we have 5 or more 10 minutes to go? Yes, we do. Okay. So,
In my class,
is this too personal? Is this too personal?
no, I would like to mention one point. I feel myself alone during these online lectures. Really, for example, previously when we enter the class, we can read the students' faces. Okay, so we can recognize their emotions, and also we can sense their expectations from the class. And for example, if they are hungry, if they are bored, and also if they have any kind of other emotions, we can read from their faces, from their body movements, gestures, postures, right? Now I think we are lacked in this part. So in these online lectures, you cannot read, you cannot sense these emotions from the students' faces or any kind of body parts. So the courses are more boring for me, if you are asking me this part. Compared with the face-to-face meetings, I really miss them.
Less fun.
Yeah, I really miss them. In other ones, yes, we are offering hybrid courses, hybrid classes, but they couldn't be crowded too much. And also, I have only 2 students in one of my classes that I have to go in 5 minutes. So they are waiting for me. When I see these students, I'm really so glad to see them. So I hope in the future, I guess, we will experience these more satisfactory dates in front of us. The second part of thing, now you know, I think the students are too eager to fill the student surveys. I would like to tell them, do not torture us, okay? I know.
Show some mercy. Some mercy.
Yeah, I know they will conduct eye for an eye process. But as Professor Kenan said, we are also challenging in these under tough circumstances. So please forgive us. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Professor, then Professor.
Professor, please.
Well, I hesitate to go in depth to very narrow question of the dean, but I would like to say that when it comes to the students, and then the question of do we give to them best and how do we measure it, and then the moment of a kind of a climax that would reach the place. Well, I feel it, most of the time when it comes to the class settings, when it comes to the specific students, and the eye-to-eye contact, and then of course the dedication to the class itself, and then of course regular attendance to the classes, and then the questions during the class itself. But more importantly, I estimate the climax or such kind of the success in terms of the exams when I read some of those questions or the answers from the students. And then you can easily understand if they were with you or they were not with you, or they have benefited from you or they have not benefited from you. So I have seen quite many of those exams, and then of course I remember them, and then those are really our best and top students, and they demonstrate if you do something in the class or you don't do something in the class. Second, very often I get inquiries from the students who have graduated from our university for the recommendation letter. And I now even cannot count the number of recommendation letters for the students for the continuation of the postgraduate studies, and for the recommendations for the applications for the jobs. If they don't remember me, if they do not value me, they wouldn't be inquiring and asking for my recommendation. And finally, to make some kind of overall general conclusion related to most of the questions that the dean was actually asking or moderating here during the panel or the session, I would recall back Tony Blair during one of his campaigns. He had a very interesting slogan. So he said, education, education, and education. So let us emphasize on the education no matter what. And then, of course, let us fight back COVID-19 and let us win at the end. Thank you.
Professor, thank you very much. Final comments.
What
most,
to add?
most effective lessons.
What to add? I mean, how to know if you had some success? It's not your aha moment. It's when you see student I see now. That's the level of success. So when you see that student actually is understanding what he or she is doing and that succeeding, adopting, creating, delivering, that's kind of when you realize. So we made it. I made it. So it's the point. But it's, I mean, observing the process all the time, introspectively and outside, and trying to be kind of innocent bystander and trying to objectify yourself and the student at the same time. I think that kind of give you the relevance in terms of understanding when you are doing good and when you are not doing good, and same way. And that's important to push also with the students, because self-reflection and self-criticism and also criticism towards the others, it's really important. And then you see that how that spirit of critique is slowly building, and then you see that you can kind of record some success. But that's the process. It's not based on a single class unit or single course unit. That's something that you can say after a generation or after a year in course or something like that.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your
Thank you,
ideas.
students.
Yes, definitely. We need to thank Professor Gostin and Digital TV production crew.
Thank you.
See you on some other occasion.